Have any of you ever looked around, looked at people walking by, and wondered, like, where do they come from? What are they doing? What's their purpose here? On the other side of that, have you ever wondered, what if they never existed? What if they never were and never came to be? Today, I will be talking about abortion and 3 different types of abortion. There's so many types of abortion that I could not fit them into one speech, so I chose 3 different types depending on the stage. I will talk about the side effects, the procedures, and the actual abortion procedures, and the different types of the abortions. This information I have compiled strictly through research, and I did not use my own opinion to influence the information that I bring. The purpose of this speech is not to force you to believe one way or another on whether abortion is good or bad, or whether it is morally acceptable or not. This speech, rather, is to inform everybody about the facts of abortion. Starting off, from AmericanPregnancy.org, they discussed the various types of abortion, and I chose the 3, starting with the medical abortion. And it is usually performed within 2 to 10 weeks of the pregnancy. It's a clinical setting, an outpatient surgery, and it is actually not a surgical procedure. Next, you have the vacuum aspiration, which is performed between 2 and 13 weeks of pregnancy, and it is also in a clinical setting, and the patient can go home afterwards. And third, there is dilation and extraction, performed within 13 to 21 weeks of pregnancy, and it's done in a hospital setting. It's usually a surgery style, and usually takes a little more time. So now that I've discussed, the 3 different types of abortion procedures that I'll talk about, I'll tell you a little bit about each one. So with the medical abortion, the patient is given a pill, and the pill is sort of a poison which causes the body to reject the fetus, or it actually can, in turn, actually kill the fetus instead, causing the body to then dispel the tissues in the placenta. They pass the fetus in the placenta naturally, no surgery, and is very quick. In vacuum aspiration, the patient is numbed, given a local anesthetic. Usually it's local means directly onto the site of a procedure, and a suction catheter is inserted into the uterus, and they remove all the tissues, the placenta, the fetus, and everything out of the uterus, usually in about 10 to 15 minutes. So here's a little video on the vacuum aspiration. The doctor that is talking about this gives a little bit of background about himself.
Surgical abortion called suction D&C, dilatation and curettage. This is the most frequently performed abortion and is used typically from 5 to 13 weeks of pregnancy. After administering anesthesia, the abortionist uses a speculum like this. This is placed inside the vagina and opened using this screw on the side, allowing the abortionist to see the cervix, the entrance to the uterus. The cervix acts as a gate that stays closed for the duration of pregnancy, protecting the baby until it is ready for birth. The abortionist uses a series of metal rods called dilators, like these, which increase in thickness, and inserts them into the cervix to dilate it, gaining access to the inside of the uterus where the baby resides. The baby has a heartbeat, fingers, toes, arms, and legs, but its bones are still weak and fragile. The abortionist takes a suction catheter like this one. This is a 14 French suction catheter. It's clear plastic, about 9 inches long, and it has a hole through the center. It is inserted through the cervix into the uterus. The suction machine is then turned on with a force 10 to 20 times more powerful than your household vacuum cleaner. The baby is rapidly torn apart by the force of the suction and squeezed through this tubing down into the suction machine, followed by the placenta. Though the uterus is mostly emptied at this point, one of the risks of a suction D&C is incomplete abortion, essentially pieces of the baby or placenta left behind. This can lead to infection or bleeding. In an attempt to prevent this, the abortionist uses a curette to scrape a lining of the uterus. The Curette is basically a long-handled curved blade. Once the uterus is empty, the speculum is removed and the abortion is complete. The risks of suction DNC include perforation or laceration of the uterus or cervix, potentially damaging intestine, bladder, and nearby blood vessels, hemorrhage, infection, and in rare instances, even death. Future pregnancies are also at a greater risk for loss or premature delivery due to abortion-related trauma and injury to the cervix. As I mentioned,
So that was Dr. Lopino, and he was, as it mentioned earlier in the video before the volume was turned up, he was an abortion doctor and he's since then retired. So that gives you a little bit of insight on the vacuum aspiration procedure. And so the next is the dilation and extraction. So this is it's a little more complicated, and 2 days before the procedure they induce labor with an injection, and then they also inject a lethal medicine into the amniotic sac of the baby. The amniotic sac is a sac surrounding the fetus, and it contains water inside to cushion the baby, and it also aids in protection, and it surrounds the embryo and placenta all the way from conception. So they induce labor, inject lethal medicine, and then the water breaks within 2 to 3 days, and the patient is supposed to return to the hospital. At the hospital, they go into surgery, and the baby is grafted with forceps and pulled out piece by piece until they remove all of the parts of the baby. They then take all the parts and put them back on a plate so that they can see that they got everything, because if they were to leave parts in, it would start to rot, and it could cause harm to the mother. Along with every procedure, there's a possibility of side effects, and there's chances that things could go wrong in any type of procedure. Some of the side effects from these abortions are torn tissues, infection, bleeding, hemorrhage, and blood clots. The list goes on and on. And but there's also the possibility of not being able to get pregnant again. And for me personally, and like our family, that hasn't really been prevalent. But I do know of family friends that I know one family in particular that they did have a miscarriage, and I mean it was very taxing on them mentally. So it can also have mental side effects to the family and mother, as well as to other siblings. Hopefully this has answered some of the questions that you might have had about abortion and educated a little bit on the types, procedures, and the side effects of abortions. You know, like I said earlier, the goal of this speech is not to force anybody on my opinion or someone else's opinion or anything, but just to inform and not to cause conflict. Thank you, and I appreciate your listening.